under the dazzling crystal chandeliers hanging high in the grand hall of the Skyline Tower ballroom. Everything was staged like a perfect painting of power and luxury. The air was thick with the scent of high-end perfume, mingling with the delicate clinking of slender champagne coupes and the soft yet sharp conversations among those well-versed in influence and status. At the center of this closed world stood the Hensley family, the owners of Hensley Industries, an industrial conglomerate with a reputation built over 3 generations. Tonight, they were hosting their annual gala to raise funds for the Hensley Foundation, an event known as the meeting place for Chicago's elite and prominent figures from nearby cities. It was where every gaze converged, and discreet handshakes could open deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. As the gold-plated elevator doors opened, Dr. Amara Collins entered the scene with an inscrutable calm. Her simple black dress hugged her slender figure, her hair neatly pinned back, and the only accessory was a finely crafted steel watch on her left wrist. She moved slowly, as if observing and memorizing every detail of the space, from the refracted light on the marble floor tiles to the way the serving staff skillfully avoided the guests' paths while keeping their trays perfectly balanced. Within a few steps, Amara caught the sharp gaze of Madeline Hensley, who was standing beside her mother, Eleanor, and brother Bradley Jr., near the charity auction display table. Madeline's look was as sharp as a cut, her lips slightly curled, as if holding a question tinged with ill will. Her voice was soft, but clear enough for those nearby to hear. "Excuse me, I don't recall seeing your name on the guest list." A brief silence fell over the group, chatting nearby. Eleanor lightly twisted her pearl necklace, a familiar gesture she used whenever she wanted to assert her status, then added, "Those who support our events usually know their place." Bradley Jr., not missing the opportunity, pulled out his phone, the screen lighting up as he began recording, seemingly waiting for a viral moment to unfold. Amara made no haste to respond. She gently adjusted the black clutch in her hand, her eyes shining with absolute calm. "Perhaps you should check the list again," she said in a low, soft voice, carrying a weight that made it difficult to dismiss. Bradley Sr., who had just arrived after some small talk with other guests, caught his daughter's gaze and signaled 2 security officers to approach. 2 men in black suits appeared promptly, their steps firm, one of them gripping a radio, ready to assist at the host's request. Phones began to rise at the edges of the crowd. Some faces showed a mix of anticipation and skepticism, eager to see what would happen next. Online, a guest's live stream had already reached thousands of views within minutes, the comments pouring in, some supportive, others sarcastic, but all captivated by the unfolding story beneath the dazzling lights of the gala. The security officers politely but firmly requested Amara to present her invitation. She remained unruffled, calmly taking a cream-colored card embossed with golden patterns from her clutch and handing it to them. One officer's eyes briefly widened as he scanned the information, but before he could say a word, Eleanor let out a soft, crystal-like laugh. "Seems legit, but we all know sometimes invitations get faked." Each word was sharpened and dropped deliberately to sow doubt among the crowd. Amara merely tilted her head slightly, as if making a mental note of a small detail for herself. She offered no defense, no explanation, letting her silence soak into the air. The kind of silence that made those around begin to wonder, were they misjudging this woman? The light from the central chandelier reflected into thousands of tiny beams across the marble floor, each step, each clink of a glass part of a carefully rehearsed performance. Yet amidst this precision, the atmosphere around the Hensley family grew dense, as if the entire ballroom was waiting for an unseen verdict. The taller security guard cleared his throat softly, glancing at the invitation in his hand. He hesitated, clearly recognizing its validity, but also feeling the pressure from Bradley Sr.'s gaze. "The invitation seems to be in order," he said slowly. His response was not enough to ease Madeline's cold smile, who immediately leaned toward her mother to whisper, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Perhaps someone exploited a security loophole." Eleanor, with a steady voice as if reciting an unspoken rule, added, "The Hensley Foundation exists by maintaining standards, and standards mean we know exactly who deserves to stand here." The words "deserves" dropped heavily into the air, causing several eyes in the crowd to scan Amara from head to toe. In a corner, a middle-aged woman wearing thin-rimmed glasses, an economic reporter from the Chicago Ledger, frowned slightly upon noticing the faint embossed logo on the invitation. Something felt familiar. She hadn't spoken yet, but her eyes followed Amara as if sensing an unexpected development was about to unfold. Amara, seemingly unruffled, calmly observed each face around her. When Bradley Jr. raised his phone higher to capture a better angle for social media, she glanced at his screen. The viewer count was soaring, 1,200, then 7,800, with comments streaming like wild waves, some supportive, many mocking, and plenty of fiery emojis. She knew every move she made next would echo far beyond this room. "Perhaps," Amara spoke, her voice deep and steady, "I should wait in the main area until things become clear." Her tone made the simple statement feel like a subtle command, causing the two security officers to hesitate momentarily. But Bradley Sr., unwilling to let the moment linger, leaned toward his wife. "We haven't even reached the announcement. Only 14 minutes left." Eleanor nodded, her cold smile blooming once again. "Then let's resolve this quickly, to avoid any disruption during this important evening." Other guests began murmuring. Some were indifferent to the drama, but many were drawn in like spectators of a play without a script. Meanwhile, the live stream had surpassed 10,000 viewers. Somewhere beyond this room, public opinion was forming, yet the Hensley family remained unaware of the growing wave. Amara took a soft breath, her eyes still calm. She glanced at the watch on her wrist, 46. In her mind, every number, every event, every time stamp was arranged like pieces on a grand chessboard. And in that brief moment, if one were perceptive enough, they would see a slight smile flicker at the corner of her lips, a sign that the game had just begun. The pauses between conversations grew heavy as Madeline crossed her arms and fixed her gaze sharply on Amara, as if forcing her to humble herself before the crowd. "Could you tell us," she said, loud enough to carry beyond the circle of guests, "who on the board sponsored your presence here tonight?" The question was thrown not to seek an answer, but to frame Amara as an outsider, someone who must prove she is worthy to be here. Bradley Jr. immediately lowered his camera slightly to get a wider shot, just enough to capture everyone's expressions. He gave a thin smile, almost whispering, but loud enough for the phone's microphone to catch. Golden content right here. The live stream views soared past 12,000, with comments mixing outrage and curiosity. Amara didn't answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her eyes resting on a man standing a few meters away, the economic reporter from the Chicago Ledger, who had remained silent from the start. They exchanged a brief glance, and in that moment, an unspoken understanding spread. The truth could not be buried. "Perhaps," Amara said softly but firmly, "you will soon learn who invited me here." The vague yet confident statement caused a few frowns, while Eleanor let out a soft laugh, her voice clear and crystalline. "We have clear security protocols. Sometimes invitations get lost or copied. That can certainly happen." The word copied was emphasized, like a sharp, subtle needle piercing Amara's credibility. The taller security officer handed the invitation back to Amara, but kept waiting for Bradley Sr.'s order. He leaned toward them and quietly said, "Escort her to the service entrance. Handle it outside." A seemingly gentle decision, yet full of implication. The service entrance reserved for staff, never for honored guests. Amara slightly turned as if ready to leave, then paused. The phone in her clutch buzzed 3 times in quick succession. She pulled it out, scrolling through the screen. 3 missed calls from Marcus Lane, CEO of Titan Investments. A new wave of silence swept through the room as Amara set down her clutch, picked up the phone, and dialed. "Marcus?" Her voice was clear and loud enough for the area to hear. "I know you're preparing for tonight's announcement. We need to revisit the Titan-Hensley agreement." The words dropped like a heavy stone into a still pond. Bradley Sr. froze, Madeline briefly paled, and Bradley Jr. lowered his phone, his gaze suddenly uncertain. The Chicago Ledger reporter began taking notes. Guests on the edges of the circle leaned in to hear better. The live stream surpassed 15,000 views, comments flooding in. "What's going on? Titan is the new partner Hensley is about to announce. Who is this woman?" Amara glanced at her watch. "You said the announcement is in 14 minutes? Perfect. Then we have just enough time to make a crucial decision." Her voice was gentle, but each word seemed to anchor itself in the air, dragging down a heavy silence. The atmosphere that had once seemed lively at the gala now felt taut, like a string about to snap. Every gaze was fixed on Amara, not only because her voice rang clearly throughout the grand hall, but because of how she spoke, as if the entire most important story of the evening was held firmly in her hands. Bradley Sr. tried to regain control. He stepped forward, his voice deep and composed, like at a board meeting. "Excuse me, but this is a private event. If you have issues with your partners, you can address them later. We have yet to make the official announcement." He emphasized "we" as a declaration of authority. Amara tilted her head slightly, a faint smile barely visible at the corner of her lips. "I understand, but when billions of dollars and the reputation of an international corporation are at stake, the time to deal with the issue is right now." Her tone remained gentle, yet carried a force that made her words impossible to ignore. Madeline, standing beside her mother with arms crossed, tried to maintain composure. "What exactly are you implying?" she asked, though the tension in her eyes was already apparent. Eleanor tried to keep her aristocratic poise, but her fingers twisted her pearl necklace faster than usual. Both security guards hesitated, no longer daring to approach Amara. Their eyes flicked to Bradley Sr., then back to the woman standing tall, her shoulders relaxed as if nothing could unsettle her. Outside the circle, phones continued to rise. Bradley Jr.'s live stream had surpassed 18,000 viewers, with comments flooding in, questions, speculations, and the word Titan appearing more and more, mingled with sharp observations from those seemingly more informed than the average online audience. Amara pressed her phone close to her ear, listening intently. Yes, Marcus, I'm right in the middle of their event. And yes, I've seen enough to make a decision. Terminate all cooperation. Her words rang loud enough for those nearby to hear, like a blade slicing through the gala's polished facade. A collective breath was released among the crowd. Madeline took a half step forward, but froze when their eyes met Amara's, not angry, but deep and calm, as if seeing through the room's fake glamour. You can't do this, Bradley Sr. said, his voice no longer steady. The whole city is waiting for tonight's announcement. This is a historic project. Amara nodded slightly, acknowledging his words. Yes, history, but not the way you imagine. She ended the call, placed her phone back into her clutch, and looked directly at him. You will have enough time to prepare for a different announcement. The entire room fell silent. Even the band in the corner softly stopped playing, caught in the gravity of the moment. A few guests exchanged glances, sensing that they had just witnessed a shift of power unfolding before their eyes, and that this was only the beginning. Whispers began to spread throughout the room, like a cold breeze slipping through clusters of guests. Though the gala remained brightly lit and lavishly decorated, the atmosphere was now layered with a different aura, one not everyone noticed, but those sensitive to power could clearly feel. Amara took a slow step forward, never taking her eyes off Bradley Sr. There is one thing, she said evenly and softly, that perhaps you are not fully aware of, or haven't realized yet. Each word flowed deliberately, as if she wanted everyone in the room, and on tens of thousands of live stream screens, to hear clearly. Bradley Jr., who had lowered his phone in shock after the recent call, suddenly looked up. Madeline held her breath, while Eleanor tightened her pearl necklace, a gesture no longer habitual, but a reflex to steady herself. My firm, Amara continued, is not just a partner of Titan. Collins Capital Partners currently owns 35% of Hensley Industries. An immediate heavy silence engulfed the auditorium. There was a faint clinking of glasses at a table in the back, abruptly stopping. Someone in the crowd raised an eyebrow, and the Chicago Ledger reporter, who had remained silent from the start, immediately recorded the number just mentioned. With her experience, she knew how devastating this revelation could be. Bradley Sr. blinked, as if needing a moment to fully grasp the meaning of those words. That can't be, he began, but Amara interrupted him with a steady gaze. I have thoroughly reviewed the SEC 13D filings. The strategic transactions over the past 18 months, all are legal and publicly disclosed. It's just that perhaps you and your family haven't noticed or refuse to believe that someone outside the Hensley lineage could hold significant control. A ripple of murmurs passed among the financially savvy guests. They knew well, owning 35% of shares is not just a number. It's a position to directly influence the board, strategic decisions, and even reshape the entire leadership structure. Madeline tried to regain her composure, but her voice wavered slightly. "Are you trying to threaten us?" Amara didn't answer immediately. She let the question hang long enough for the silence to become pressure. Then she spoke, still calmly. "I'm not here to threaten. I'm simply stating the truth. And that truth is the foundation for the decisions to come." In a corner of the room, a guest pulled out his phone to check the news. Within minutes, a notification appeared on his screen. "Breaking news. Collins Capital Partners confirms major stake in Hensley Industries." The information spread quickly, merging with the flood of comments exploding across social media platforms. Eleanor quietly leaned toward her husband, whispering something so softly that even Bradley Jr., standing nearby, couldn't hear. Yet the expression in her eyes had changed. It was no longer the initial disdain, but mixed with worry and calculation. Amara stepped back half a pace, not retreating, but creating space. "And now," she said, "perhaps we should discuss the necessary changes, before things go too far." The auditorium remained silent, but it was not an empty silence. It was the silence of a court yet to deliver its verdict. Everyone waited to see the next move from the woman who had just calmly announced that she held a controlling stake in one of the city's oldest corporations. Amara didn't rush to speak further. She let the information she had revealed spread, sinking into every gaze and every thought. In that stillness, those familiar with corporate power structures began to envision the outcome. A major shareholder with 35% ownership not only has a voice, but also the power to act. Bradley Sr. tried to regain his composure, but his voice no longer held the certainty it once did. "Dr. Collins, if what you say is true, I believe any disagreements can be resolved internally, without—" Before he could finish, Amara tilted her head, cutting him off gently but firmly. "Internally, you say? We are standing before more than 200 witnesses and tens of thousands watching live online. The concept of internal left this room a long time ago." Eleanor squinted, about to retort, but Amara's gaze made her hesitate. Madeline, still proud but growing impatient, asked, "So what do you want? Are you trying to turn this gala into a shareholders' meeting?" A thin smile briefly crossed Amara's lips. "This meeting doesn't require a vote yet, but I will let you know the agenda I plan to bring to the board meeting next Monday." She paused, letting her words hang heavy in the air. "I will propose 3 major changes," Amara continued, her tone steady and clear. "First, the immediate suspension of the entire senior management team to conduct a corporate culture and anti-discrimination law compliance review. Second, the establishment of a $50 million fund to support minority-owned businesses and community initiatives. Third, the reform of human resources policies to ensure hiring and promotion standards based on merit, not background or prejudice." A murmur spread throughout the room. The investors instantly understood these were not just formal requests. They were a plan to restructure power within Hensley Industries. Bradley Jr. stepped forward, eyes wide. "You can't. We are the founding family. This is our company." Amara replied calmly, enunciating every word. "No, Bradley, this is a company of shareholders, and I am the largest shareholder." Her words struck like a hammer, silencing any immediate resistance. In the corner, the Chicago Ledger reporter had already sent out the first breaking news. Major shareholder unexpectedly imposes comprehensive reforms at Hensley Industries right in the middle of the gala. Eleanor leaned toward her husband, whispering, but this time her voice betrayed panic. Bradley Sr. clenched his champagne glass strap, but did not drink. He understood fully what had just been announced was no longer a proposal. With the shareholding percentage and public pressure, it was a command. So, Amara scanned the room once more, her eyes resting on each face in the Hensley family, then nodded softly. Monday, 9 a.m. Don't be late. On Monday morning, the Chicago sky was covered with grey clouds, as if the weather itself reflected the tense atmosphere inside the Hensley Industries headquarters. The boardroom, usually exuding power with its polished walnut wood and expensive abstract paintings, felt more like a courtroom today, with every eye focused on a single figure. Amara entered precisely at 9 a.m., followed by 2 lawyers and a corporate restructuring expert. Her footsteps echoed steadily on the wooden floor, each step marking the ticking of a countdown clock. Bradley Sr. had arrived early, sitting at the head of the table, but today he couldn't command the room. The entire board knew. The real power sat across from him. Good morning, Amara said, her voice carrying clearly throughout the room. She sat down opposite Bradley Sr., placing a thick dossier on the table. I trust everyone has received the draft agenda I sent over the weekend. No one responded immediately. Some board members flipped through papers, others simply watched silently. Amara's lawyer opened a laptop, ready to record the entire proceeding. Before we begin, Bradley Sr. tried to maintain a calm tone. I want to remind everyone that this company was built over 3 generations, and any changes must consider long-term impacts. Amara tilted her head slightly, a faint smile crossing her lips. I completely agree. That's why my proposals are not intended to dismantle, but to ensure Hensley Industries survives and thrives for many more generations. The issue is, it must grow according to the right values. She began presenting steadily and confidently, with no rush. First point, the temporary suspension of the entire senior management team, including the CEO, COO, and the chairman of the board, to conduct a cultural review. Her gaze briefly swept over Victoria Hensley, still holding the CEO position, causing the woman to stiffen. Second point, a $50 million fund for minority-owned businesses, co-funded by Hensley Industries over the next 3 years. A board member nodded slightly. Clearly this idea had gained support from some. Third point, a complete overhaul of HR policies, prioritizing meritocracy, and eliminating any form of preferential treatment based on background. The room grew heavy with tension. Finally, Harrison Pierce, a longtime board member, spoke up. I move to vote immediately. We've all seen the impact of Friday night's events. Not acting now is tantamount to suicide. The vote proceeded quickly. The result stunned Bradley Sr. and the Hensley family. All of Amara's proposals were overwhelmingly approved. Victoria was suspended as CEO. Bradley Jr. lost his COO position. Eleanor withdrew from the charity board. Amara did not smile in triumph. She simply closed the dossier and looked around the room. Thank you for your cooperation. This is the beginning of a new Hensley Industries, more transparent, more just, and more sustainable." Her words hung in the air, heavy with promise, or perhaps a warning. News of the emergency vote spread almost instantly, faster than any official statements. Within hours, numerous financial newspapers and major news channels simultaneously ran headlines. Hensley Industries overhauls after gala incident. Major shareholder leads the change. Inside the headquarters, change began with seemingly small but symbolic actions. The board of directors' nameplate in the main lobby was taken down for updating. Offices once considered off-limits to lower-level employees opened wider, no longer shadowed by scrutinizing glances from executive assistants. Amara kept her promises. The $50 million fund for minority businesses was established in the first week. The legal and finance departments collaborated with an independent expert team to set up transparent, public criteria. Once published on the company's website, traffic surged fourfold, accompanied by hundreds of applications within 48 hours. Regarding HR policies, an external consultancy was invited to review all recruitment and promotion procedures. Long-standing gray areas where personal relationships and family ties outweighed merit were gradually eliminated. A new quarterly transparency and fairness index for promotions was planned to be published and included in the annual report. The media quickly caught on to the story. Reports covered not only the gala and sweeping reforms, but also began profiling Amara Collins, a woman of color with humble beginnings who overcame countless biases in finance to build Collins Capital Partners into a multi-billion-dollar investment fund. However, acceptance within the company was not universal. Some long-serving managers were cautious, even openly skeptical in internal meetings. Amara understood this, but chose not to confront head-on. Instead, she initiated values dialogues, open meetings among new leadership, staff, and even former dissenters to explain the vision and listen to concerns. The first dialogues were tense. Some employees bluntly said, "We fear this is just a PR campaign, and things will revert in a few months." Amara did not dodge. She replied, "Real change doesn't happen just because of a resolution. It must be maintained through consistent action, and you will be the ones monitoring it." National television soon featured these dialogues in their broadcasts, calling it a rare move at the corporate level. Public opinion, already attentive since the gala, began shifting from curiosity to cautious support. Meanwhile, the Hensley family, no longer fully in control, had to adapt to their new roles. Victoria, suspended as CEO, started unconscious bias training at Harvard Business School. Bradley Jr., and removed as COO, was required to join a 6-month leadership rehabilitation program, including volunteer work at community businesses. On social media, the story continued spreading. The gala video surpassed 2 million views, becoming reference material in crisis management courses. The hashtag #HensleyReform emerged, carrying a meaning vastly different from the initial wave of criticism. Amara knew this was just the beginning. But most importantly, the trajectory had shifted, and this time, no one could pull it back to the old lines. Just 3 months after Amara's reforms began to take effect, their impact extended far beyond Hensley Industries. The initial figures released caught the attention of the entire financial world. Voluntary employee turnover dropped by 18%, Applications from top universities doubled, and internal surveys showed overall satisfaction increasing by nearly 30%. Economic media outlets began to explore the broader aspects of the story. Bloomberg published an analysis titled, "When Equity Reforms Become a Growth Strategy." The article highlighted that the principles Amara implemented, from transparency in promotions to investing in minority-owned businesses, were not mere power moves, but genuine levers to enhance business performance. Within the industry, other corporations started feeling the pressure. Some senior executives, who once regarded Hensley as an unshakable, old empire, had to admit the new model was working. In fact, 2 direct competitors proactively contacted Collins Capital to learn about implementing the Dignity Protocol, the corporate culture standards designed by Amara. The Institutional Investors Association organized a special seminar inviting Amara to share insights on value-based investing and how to integrate ESG, environmental, social, governance, criteria into growth strategies. In her speech, she said, "We often think profit and social responsibility are opposing forces. In reality, when combined correctly, they complement and drive each other." This quote was widely cited, sparking discussions on LinkedIn and international financial forums. At Hensley Industries, the domino effect continued. The $50 million fund disbursed its first installment to 12 minority-owned businesses, creating over 400 new jobs. One funded project, a clean energy startup led by young Latinx engineers, attracted further investment from other funds after partnering with Hensley. The local community also began to feel the change. Hensley's summer internship programs opened up to students from previously underserved areas. Some community colleges reported a significant rise in engineering and management enrollments, partly due to scholarships and job opportunities from Hensley. However, not all feedback was positive. A group of conservative shareholders accused Amara of politicizing the company and worried that an excessive focus on social factors might reduce short-term profits. But the following quarterly financial report disproved these concerns. Revenues rose by 7%, recruitment costs dropped by 12%, and net profits improved thanks to better workforce performance. On social media, images of Amara at the investment seminar spread widely. The hashtag #leadership with values became a new trend, linked to success stories of Hensley and the businesses supported by the fund. Amid these changes, Amara maintained a cautious approach. In an interview, when asked if she considered this a victory, she simply smiled, "No, this is a process. The only victory is when these principles become normal, and no one needs to fight to defend them anymore." Less than a year after the groundbreaking gala, Hensley Industries had become a frequent topic on international corporate governance forums. The company's transformation was no longer an internal matter, but had evolved into case studies at Harvard, Wharton, and London Business School. In-depth analytical reports on Hensley's Dignity Protocol model were translated into multiple languages and circulated widely throughout the global financial community. Amara, who never sought the spotlight, now regularly accepted invitations from international organizations. At the World Economic Forum in Geneva, she appeared on the main stage before more than 2,000 business leaders from 60 countries. Behind her, a large screen displayed the phrase, "When profit meets principle." As Amara spoke, the auditorium fell silent, not because of volume, but due to the weight of her words. Power is not measured by who you can eliminate, but by what you choose to build. This message quickly appeared in thousands of LinkedIn posts and was quoted by CEOs from Asia to Europe. Hensley Industries also began attracting new international partners. A German electric vehicle manufacturer proposed a supply chain collaboration based on ESG criteria, while a Japanese tech company sought to implement green innovation programs. These deals not only brought revenue, but also reinforced Hensley's image as a global symbol of responsible business. Back home in Chicago, Hensley's headquarters became a popular destination for economic delegations. From African CEOs to South American trade ministers, everyone wanted to witness firsthand how a century-old corporation transformed from the eye of a crisis to a new era of prosperity. Amara herself maintained a packed schedule, but dedicated at least one day each month to community dialogues held in the regions where Hensley operated. At a meeting in Detroit, a long-time worker stood up and said, "I never thought my voice mattered to the company. Now I know it doesn't just matter, it's heard." Moments like these were worth more to Amara than any profit figure. But they also created tangible results. Employee engagement rates hit record highs, and Hensley was ranked among the top 10 most desirable workplaces by Glassdoor. Of course, there was still chatter. Some analysts doubted the Amara effect would last once she stepped down from her shareholder leadership role. But the first post, Reform Financial Report, spoke for itself. Revenues rose 19%, net profits increased 15%, and market share expanded into 3 new regions. At the end of every interview, Amara often deflected attention away from herself. Instead, she emphasized, "What matters isn't whose name is remembered, but whether the principle continues to live on within the system." And with Hensley Industries, that principle had taken root deeply, becoming the DNA of a sustainable business model, a lesson the world is now eager to learn. 2 years after that fateful gala night, Amara Collins is remembered not only as the major shareholder who transformed Hensley Industries, but also as the initiator of a global movement. The Dignity-Driven Capitalism Alliance was founded, bringing together over 500 multinational corporations, representing more than 14 million workers across 5 continents. The Alliance's goal isn't to produce glossy reports, but to commit to measurable changes, transparency in governance, fairness in hiring, and genuine accountability to communities. Hensley Industries has become a case study used by business schools from Harvard to INSEAD. A video detailing the company's transformation has surpassed 5 million views, not only because of its drama, but because it proves one thing. Crises, when handled with wisdom and vision, can become turning points leading to prosperity. At the 2-year anniversary celebration, held at the newly opened headquarters in Houston, a modern, eco-friendly operations center, Amara stood on stage. In the audience were not only business leaders, but also workers, engineers, and office staff who had witnessed and contributed to the company's evolution. She said, "When we began, I said, power is not about who you remove, but what you build. Today, I want to add, true strength only exists when it is shared." A series of statistics proved her words were no mere slogan. Hensley's revenue increased by 27% compared to pre-reform levels. Employee retention rose by 34%. The number of strategic partners from minority-owned businesses tripled. Most importantly, the company has not recorded a single discrimination lawsuit in the past 2 years. Amara herself declined all offers to take on direct executive roles. She remains a strategic shareholder, focusing on expanding the global alliance and advising corporations eager to adopt the Dignity Protocol model. In the financial world, she is regarded as a symbol of quiet leadership. No need for noise, yet every decision leaves a lasting impact. That evening, as she left the headquarters, Amara paused in the lobby. The new leadership plaque hung on the wall. Beneath it, engraved in steel, was the quote, "Profit and dignity, two sides of a sustainable value." The lights reflected off the words, serving as a reminder to all who pass through these doors. The story of Hensley Industries did not end with an event, but continues to live on in every decision, every person, and every contract signed. From a moment that seemed like a mere personal confrontation, Amara Collins turned it into the beginning of a new standard, a standard the world is now learning from. And as she once said, true victory is when the right principles no longer have to fight to survive. From the perspective of a leadership and business restructuring expert, Amara Collins's story reveals that true power does not lie in domination, but in the ability to turn crises into opportunities and conflicts into foundations for sustainable change. It is clear evidence that when the right principles are applied consistently, they not only save a company from collapse, but also create a model for the world to follow. If you believe that wisdom and dignity can go hand in hand with success, please like and subscribe to continue following these inspiring stories. And before you leave a comment with the phrase "true strength" to help spread this message even further.